Okay, and so that was so I gave an overview from my second chapter of my book, and the three causes of misery, which are the highest level is ignorance of your true nature. Second is the disturbance of mind. So when your mind is disturbed, or just in general, there's lack of clarity. And the third is impurities. And I talked about impurities being like anger, desires, jealousy, greed, any negative emotions or thoughts are which are not helpful, like negative thoughts and negative emotions. Okay, so that I'd gone over those. Then the solution that's presented for these three problems, so to remove impurities, to calm the mind, and to gain knowledge about your true nature, the methodology in the Vedas and the Gitas is start with karma yoga, which is selfless action without desire for the results. The second is the meditation or upasana. The third is devotion, which is bhakti yoga, and the fourth is gyan yoga, which is the true knowledge of yourself. So basically, you remove the mud from the water, you calm the surface of the water which is disturbed, and then you can see a true reflection of yourself and the depth of your being. So that was basically the what we had gone through. In the second chapter, the approach that Krishnji takes is that he starts with the highest knowledge, which is that you are the eternal soul. So the reason why he did that is because you need to understand what is permanent versus impermanent, so that you do not have fear of death, because the ultimate fear is a fear of death. So if you realize or you acknowledge that nobody really dies, right? The soul is eternal. Life is a continuum. Then you're not obsessed with this fear of death of yourself or your loved ones. Because he's very worried he's going to kill his loved ones, and he doesn't really want to do that. So that is why the first thing he talks about is the is the impermanence of the body and the permanence of the soul, which is very critical, right? That's the foundation. So if once you're founded on the right principles, then you can move ahead. So the first is vivek, the wisdom or the discrimination between what is permanent and what is impermanent. That is vivek. When you understand the difference of what is permanent and impermanent, then you can have vairagya, which is called sannyas. So we'll talk about sannyasa karma yoga, which is action from detachment. So that's why you need to understand the prereq for vairagya or sannyas is to be able to discriminate or experience the permanent versus the impermanent. Then you can go to vairagya, which is being dispassionate, not being attached, not being driven by desire, not having these this ego and going outward in the world and being associated with the lower self and all these things that come from not knowing who you truly are, which is the eternal soul. So he talked about the soul, then he went into several verses on the soul and the permanence of the soul. Then he talked about, Krishnji talked about karma yoga, that this is your duty, it's your righteousness, this is, this is what you need to do, this is your dharma, to do and act upon what is, defend what is right and fight injustice and so forth. So we've covered that so far. Now towards the, then he talks about the knowledge aspect. So then he goes into the wisdom aspect, the purity of the intellect and so forth, how you need to purify your intellect and function from that level of intellect which is purified. And now the last piece of this chapter, when Krishnji is describing about how you should function from this higher level of awareness, is where he asks, in verse number 54, is where Arjun then asks, can you please describe to me somebody of steady wisdom, which is sthita pragya. This is a very famous word. Sthita pragya means one of steady wisdom. So that's what he asks in verse number 54. And these verses that follow are actually very beautiful. The reason why when we hear descriptions of an enlightened soul, or when we are with a enlightened saint, when we hear those virtues, those same virtues get ignited in us, the same virtues awaken in us, because the seed of these virtues are in us. So from verse 55 to like a few verses down, you'll read how Krishnji describes this person who's established in the self. So 55, he says, a man who's completely gives up all desires of the mind and is satisfied in the self, by the self, then alone he can be called one of steady wisdom. So again, he's going to repeat this over and over again, basically that one who knows his true nature and has experienced his true nature, not just heard about it or had fleeting experiences of it, but one who's established in it. So there are three levels, there are three levels of, or I should say three steps in evolution. So the first step in soul evolution is when you hear about it, you read about the knowledge, you gain the information, you have an idea what it is, what the self is. It's described. The self is bliss, the self is all consciousness, all intelligence, it is eternal, it is existence, and so forth, right? Satchitanand. So you describe, you hear about it. The second step in your soul evolution is when you actually start experiencing it, whether it's through meditation or some, profound experiences in your life, where you get a touch of your true sense, you get a feeling of your true sense, true self, and those start increasing. You start increasing the awareness and the amount of time that you stay in that experience. The final stage of soul evolution is when you become established in it. So it becomes an existential reality. You are living that knowledge, or you're living truth. You're become Satchitanand. It's not a fleeting experience. It's not just book-wise. So that's when he's saying that a person who's established in the self is one who is called of steady wisdom, or sthita prajna. So verse number 56, he says, he whose mind is not disturbed by sorrow, who in prosperity does not long for pleasures who does not long for pleasures and prosperity, who is free from attach. Now this is a very important verse. 56, he says, he whose mind is not disturbed by sorrow, who in prosperity does not long for pleasures, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger. Now, you see, remember I told you that, there's all these impurities of emotion, right? They're called rag, dvesh, and so forth, greed, many other things. But finally it comes down to rag and dvesh. Rag means, here rag is described as attachment. But it's it's a craving, it's a feverishness, it's this urge, this unsatiable desire that you continuously want more and more and more. So that is called rag. So here it's called attachment because it's really an attachment to the outside objects. So here rag is described as attachment, and you'll see other translations of it, but this is rag. And then fear, bhai. So this is one of the most fundamental negative emotions. So most negative emotions actually, if you look at the foundation or what is the root cause of it, finally they come from fear. And the ultimate fear is the fear of death. So that is why fear is chosen here as one of the impurities. And the third is anger, which is dvesh. So here rag and dvesh are mentioned, which are the primary negative emotions from which other negative emotions emerge. So rag and dvesh, which are attachment and anger. So why am I saying that? So the rag causes attachment, and dvesh, which is aversion, causes anger. So a lot of times our dvesh, our aversion, is towards things that we do not like, things we do not want, or a lot of people who are perfectionists, they cannot tolerate imperfection, and when they see things which do not happen according to what they want, or people are not behaving according to what they expect, whether it's your boss or your husband or your children, most of the time you will notice that the world is not according to how you want it, right? So obviously it's going to result in anger. And anger is one of the most common emotions that everybody experiences. So this sage, this enlightened person, is one who is free from attachment, from fear or fear of death. He's fearless, and he never gets angry. And he's never disturbed by lack in his life, because he never gets rattled by sorrow, or if supposing this person loses a job, or gets if he's unhealthy or gets a disease or any such thing, he doesn't get disturbed. Why is that, right? Why is it? Because one who has experienced that I am not this, I am the soul, my soul is untouched by all of this, I will remain, I will not get affected. I, meaning my true self, is not going to get affected by disease. My soul is not going to get affected if I lose a job. And when you get established in your true self, you truly do not associate yourself with the ego desires. You're not driven from your ego side. It's the ego that gets hurt. It's the ego that gets angry. It's the ego that fears its own death. A soul never has these kind of expectations. It's totally detached. It functions from a level where it's so content in itself. Nothing is lacking. So that is why this verse is very important, because most of us cannot live this, what is written here. So that's why I wanted to cover that verse. And then 57 is, again, it reiterates the same thing. One who is free of attachment, neither rejoices nor hates, and so forth. 58 is about he withdraws his senses from sense objects like a tortoise. This is also very, very often quoted verse, the verse number 58. And actually it came from Kathopanishad. Then, in 59, 60, you can read these yourself. Basically, I don't want to go over it. But what I want to go to is verse number 62. So verse number 62 and 63. These two verses are I really like these two verses, because it talks about a chain reaction that happens. And you'll see it over and over again in your life and other people's lives. So what happens is, see, when you are attached to objects outside, when objects doesn't mean physical objects, it could be a job, it could be like you want a luxury car, you want a certain college for your kids, or whatever it is that you want, you get very attached to those desires, and to those pleasures, or those the prosperity, the material prosperity, even though it's nothing wrong, but you get disturbed by it, or you get anxious by it, and it disturbs your mind, right? So because of those things that you desire in the outside world, it could be material things or otherwise, from those things in the outer world, attachment arises. So when a man thinks of objects, attachment for them arises, and then from that attachment, desire is born, right? You desire it. You see a Tesla, you want a Tesla, or you see somebody earning 250K, and you feel like you're more experienced, and why the heck am I earning this much, and this person's earning this much in a startup, and the desire is born, right? Because you're attached to that something in the outside. And then what happens is when those desires remain unfulfilled, anger arises. So from desire comes anger. Why? Why me? Why do I have to suffer? Why? How come I don't get as much? That kind of thing. So from that anger, your mind becomes deluded. It becomes, it starts imagining things. It starts fabricating things, and from that fabrication or from that delusion comes loss of memory. Your mind is now shutting down because it's so wrapped up in anger, and from that loss of memory comes a destruction of discrimination. So you don't really know what you're saying. Anything can be coming out of your mouth, and you kind of lose all control over what you're saying, what you're not saying, what is right, what is wrong. So mind gets attached to objects. From that comes the desire. From the lack of fulfillment of desire comes anger. Even if it's desire for perfection, you get angry, like, why is this person not according to what I want? You get angry, and then you just blurt out something and you react to people. So you lose your sense of discrimination. And once you lose your discrimination, that's it. That is the road to self-destruction. Basically, you have now led yourself into a very deep hole. So that's why I like these two verses, because you can see this chain reaction often in your own life. So you can follow it in the reverse. If you, supposing you really get angry, and something really, or somebody else gets very angry, and something really terrible happens as a consequence of that anger, and there's a lot of damage that happens because of that anger to yourself or to other people, you can trace it back and say, okay, why did this happen? And then you can trace it back to, okay, this came because you lost your sense of wisdom. You lost your sense of, you lost your senses, basically. And you lost your senses because, or that person lost their senses because your mind was disturbed. You could not think clearly. There was delusion, which came from anger, which came from desires, because anger always comes from desires, and so forth. And then what is it that you are attached to? What is it that you wanted? What is it that you so strongly wanted that that you were attached to? So that's kind of a chain reaction you'll see over and over again in life. So he says in 64, but a self-controlled man who moves amongst objects. So basically you move in this world with your senses under control, and you don't get disturbed by what you like or you don't like. So here what I'm trying to say in 64, what they're trying to say is that it doesn't mean that you don't live in the world. You do live in the world. There's a saying, be in the world but not of it. So you can very well live in an expensive house, have a good job, earn a lot, have a luxury car, do all of these things, but move amongst these objects, move in the world, but keep your senses under control. And don't get so carried away in likes and dislikes, that's what it's saying. So have that balance. 65 is saying in all peace, and basically whether it's in peace or in sorrow, the tranquil minded person always remains steady. So the intellect here, he's talking about at the intellect level, the purified intellect, which is the wisdom, remains steady. It doesn't get swept up in emotions. Otherwise, usually we get into a storm of emotions and our intellect goes by the wayside. So, whether it's sorrow or whether it's pleasure, either way, you remain centered. So it's not like you get overexcited and go overboard, or get deeply depressed or cry, or get carried away in sorrow. It doesn't mean that you don't cry if you lose a relative, but you don't drown in it. When you retain that wisdom, you will go through life in a more balanced manner. In the sense, you fulfill your duties, you do feel, it's not that you lose feeling, but you don't get drowned by those emotions. So that is what it means here. And so now he's talking about in verse 66, he says, okay, so what if you are not you don't have your senses under control, what will happen? So he says, well, for the uncontrolled, there is no knowledge. See, that is the prerequisite. If you don't have even your senses under control, there is no way knowledge can get into your head. There's no way you can go towards self, the knowledge of the self. You will notice that when your mind is disturbed, you can be reading the same paragraph over and over again, but your mind is somewhere else, it's disturbed, and nothing will get in till your mind calms down. And only when you calm down will something get into your head, right? So for the uncontrolled mind, there is no knowledge, let alone self-knowledge, knowledge of the self. And if you do not have an uncontrolled mind, you do not have any knowledge of the self, it is not possible to meditate. For meditation, you need a calm mind, you need to be receptive to wisdom and knowledge. And if you don't have such a mind, an unmeditative mind can have no peace. So how can you have peace of mind without a meditative mind, without any wisdom, knowledge? So you cannot have any peace. And so if you don't have peace of mind, there can be no happiness. So now you see he's just defined what happiness is. True happiness, which is sukham. Sukham can be used in duality also, sukham and dukham. So the sukham and dukham is used repeatedly for the duality of the mind. But basically he's saying here that the definition of happiness is when you have peace of mind. So that's that. And let's see. You can read the other verses. I think basically he follows the same pattern of thought over there. If you get carried away like in a storm and so forth. So some of these verses are very beautiful, like 69. He talks about a yogi, a person who's wise. He is awake when the ignorant people are sleeping. So basically, most people are in a very ignorant state. That ignorant state is symbolized here as most people are asleep and he's awake in the night. So meaning even during when people are ignorant, his wisdom is awake. That's verse number 69. It's very nice. So number 70 is talking about, like when you're so full and content and so much in bliss, when in verse number 70, he's describing where you may sometimes in your life you will have some moments of experience where you have this expanded awareness, expanded sense of self, where this expanded consciousness you will feel, and you will feel immense love and immense bliss. And when you experience those moments, you'll realize that is what you are. You are unbound bliss. You are unbound and infinite eternal love, pure love. So he's saying for the one into whom all desires enters as waters enter the ocean, which filled from all sides remains unmoved, he attains peace, but not the desirer of desires. How can he have any desires? I mean, it's like, you have infinity. Anything you add to infinity remains infinite. So it doesn't matter, there's no desires in such a person. You can add more to what he already has, but he remains full of bliss. So that's verse number 70. It's very nice verses, and he says, in this state of expansion, in this state of bliss, you can never get deluded. If you're established in it, you can never get deluded. And in that state, then you go past duality. You merge into that consciousness, into Brahman. So that is the second chapter. It's very nice. And so we finished that there. And so if anybody has any questions on chapter 2, we can quickly address them. And then we still have half an hour and we can go into chapter 3. No questions? You gotta have some questions. Okay. So we'll get into chapter 3 if you don't have any questions on chapter 2. So chapter 3 actually is essentially about this karma yoga, and karma yoga from an aspect of detachment. So that's what this talks about, this chapter. Um, the nature of action of karma yoga. So I'll just give you a high level overview of this chapter so you understand. This one is much simpler than what we've covered so far. This chapter is not as difficult as the previous one. Um, so what happened in the second chapter, you see, so first Krishnji talks about the soul, and he talks about wisdom, and then he talks about action, and then he talks about this yogi who established in the self. And so Arjun says, wow, I want to be this yogi who's established in the self. And he's confused. He says, like you're talking about going and doing my duty and acting and fighting on one side, and on the other side you're saying, be like this yogi who's established in the self. So what do you want me to do? Do you want me to act, or do you want me to renounce everything and pursue myself? Basically, should I go in for self evolution and retire and attain my higher self, or should I act? So he's confused. So he asks Krishnji, like, what is it that you want me to do? Because you see, Krishnji also said, do not be attached to inaction. So because of this doubt, now he asks Krishnji, like, what should I pursue, knowledge or action? Should I practice both? And if I should practice both knowledge and action, how do I do that? So you know this is where Krishnji sort of removes his doubt and explains what to do. When the Gita was written, Vedvyas wrote the Gita. There's a change in the way Karma Yoga is described in the Gita. That is why this chapter came about Karma Yoga. The Karma Yoga that is described in the Gita is vastly different from the Karma Yoga that is described in the Vedas. So that is why Krishnji is explaining to Arjun how you can make your actions like a yajna, like a sacrifice. The ceremony. I'm sure hopefully all of you know what a homa or yajna is. So in the Vedas, the Karma Kand talks about all and the Brahmanas. The mantras and the Brahmanas. Those two sections, they talk about karma kand, which is essentially a lot of chanting. It's a lot of these rituals, pujas and yajnas and so forth. And only after you do all these yajnas and purify yourself a certain amount is when you then go into the next section, which is upasana, where you go in and you meditate and you do your whatever, yoga and breathing and meditation and so forth. So Gita takes a step away from that, because here in the battlefield he's telling Arjun to act. Now Arjun and many of us, we don't have time, or we don't pursue this life where we go and do our yajnas and stuff like that. We got to act. We have a family. We go to work, and how do we do this karma yoga part of which is prescribed in the Vedas? So now Gita is a very different definition of karma yoga that comes about for the first time. I mean, it's written in the Gita different from the Vedas as to what karma yoga is. So I hope you understand, this basis of karma yoga, how it's sort of redefining karma yoga. So basically, Krishnji says, in life you've got to act. Okay, from birth to death. The moment you stop acting, you're gonna die, because to eat you've got to act. To breathing is also an act. I mean, everything is an act. The only time you're completely inactive is either you're in samadhi, in deep meditation, or you're dead. I mean, otherwise, life is the body is always in action. You're constantly acting. So, so that's where he's talking about. Now he gets into the karma yoga part. So here, what Krishnji tells him to do is, your actions can very much be like an act of sacrifice, where you do your actions in a sense of surrender, with love and devotion and surrender. When you act according to that, just like in a yajna, you know how you offer everything into the fire, you can act like that. So basically, when you surrender your ego, when you surrender your intellect into the self, your soul, is symbolic. The fire, in the yajna, let me just tell you a little bit about the yajna. So in the yajna, the fire symbolizes the atma, or the soul. Okay? So it's very beautiful, because anything that you offer into the fire gets purified, because it transforms into light. It gets transformed into becoming the fire. It becomes the fire. Anything you offer into the fire becomes fire. Correct? So you've offered anything which is impure, or anything in creation. So in the fire, you're offering things of creation like seeds, ghee, all this stuff. And ghee actually symbolizes creation itself. I don't want to get into it, but the cow, the animal cow, is not literally, the cow. The cow symbolizes the entire creation. And there's a reason for it. And the ghee symbolizes the final product, the purified product of that creation, or the intellect. So ghee symbolizes the intellect. I mean, I don't want to get in, just take my word for it. So when you offer these things, these are all symbolic. So you're offering everything into the body. Like the body is creation. So all these objects that you offer into the yajna, they're symbolic of you, your body, your breath, your intellect, your mind, your ego. So all of these things that you offer into the yajna, they're symbolic of you, because obviously you can't put yourself into the fire. So it's symbolic that I offer this into the fire, and the fire is the soul. So when you offer these into this fire, they become the fire. They get transformed, they get purified, and they become light. They become the Atma, and Atma is symbolized by the fire. So he's saying, in your actions should become like this yajna. Okay? So surrender your ego, surrender your mind into the soul, into the self, and you act from there. So he's transformed the Vedic yajna, which is a physical yajna that people used to do, into a karmic action of yajna, so to say. So you understand where he's going with this, okay? So what happens? Why do we have to do this? Because you see, the impurities are retained in your lower self, in your impure mind and your impure emotions. Okay, your impure self, the lower self, has all these impurities, and in order to purify them, you offer them to your higher self, and that is the only way they will get purified. So that is why he's saying that when you act from that higher self, then all these lower things would automatically get purified. So, so what usually happens? Usually we act from the ego, right? So what happens is the ego propels us into desires. The ego has certain desires. So our actions come from these desires for the result of the action. So these are ego and desire propelled actions. And when you act from the ego and not from your higher self, when you act from the ego, there are limited actions. They're usually not according to dharma. They may or may not, but a lot of times they are not according to what is righteous, what is natural, what is correct or beneficial. And so when you do that, then you accumulate vasanas and karma, right? So ego propels desires, desire-based actions then collect impurities, vasanas, karma, and then it reinforces them. Whatever you've had already, you're kind of adding to the account, or whatever these impressions are, you're making them stronger. So every time you smoke, your habit of smoking is going to increase. Every time you get angry, your habit of getting angry is going to increase, because you're just falling into the same patterns over and over again. And from that, from those accumulations of vasanas and karma, again will come actions, and those actions which are based on vasanas will cause desires and so forth. So this is an endless cycle that happens. And so how do you break the cycle is when you cut that cycle and you act from the awareness, like I mentioned before also. And when you do that, you basically are cutting, or you're exhausting all those vasanas, those impressions, habits, deep tendencies that you have. And you don't act from desires for the fruit of action, and then you kind of start negating your karmic account. So that is why in this chapter he talks about the way out of this vicious cycle is right action from yourself. So dedicate your actions to others. So it's like selfless service, or dedicate it to God and say, all your actions are for God, or don't have any expectations from what you are doing. Don't have demands, don't have these give and take. If you love somebody, oftentimes we expect something back. So love for love's sake, give for giving's sake. Do it selflessly in a spirit of devotion and love, and selfless. Be selfless, unconditional. So when we do that, when we don't have these selfish motives, then it's when we start purifying ourselves. We don't act from ego, because love is an antidote to ego, right? When you act from love, you can't be acting from ego. So it's the opposite of ego or fear, you can say, is love. So when you act, whether it's love for God, love for others, it doesn't matter. When you act from love in a selfless spirit, then those actions are going to cut your karmic cycle. They're going to cut your vasanas. They're going to reduce all these things. They're going to purify you. So your purifications, your vibrations are going to start rising. You're going to become purer. You're going to feel lighter. You'll have peace of mind. You'll have positive emotions, and so forth, right? So here, this is how he's talking about in the spirit of yajna. In the spirit of yajna, in terms of surrendering your ego and your lower mind, and then acting from love. Okay? So so that's what he's describing in this chapter. Let's see what else. So he mentions many things. I don't want to literally read all these verses, but you can read them. I want to cover the gist of it. Let's see. What else can I talk about here? Yeah. Chapter 3 is not really that. It's one of the simpler chapters, and then chapter 4 and 5 will actually talk about different aspects of Karma Yoga. But this is really what he's talking about here. Let me see if I should read some of these verses literally and see if I can. There's some of these verses I do like. Yeah, it's sort of repetitive. Yeah, I think I've touched upon most of these things. Yeah, the thing is, he's talking, a lot of these verses are talking about the Vedic sacrifice, and these Vedic sacrifices are done for devas. Let me see if there are other things I can tell you. So, in these devas, I had to tell you a few other things. I should make notes. So, one thing, I want to touch upon is, I talked to you about the yajna, so you get a better understanding of the yajna. So, in these yajnas, a lot of these celestial deities, what are called devas and devis and devatas, are worshipped. So, he says the devas nourished by sacrifice, they give you the desired objects, right? So, all of these, this karma yoga part is for maintenance of your body in terms of you ask for prosperity, you ask for good health, you ask for good relationships, whether you want to get married or for your children and so forth. So all of these rituals, all of these pujas are done mainly for some deity, whether it's Narayan or whether it's Surya, or you go to the pandit and you say, I want to pray for my house, or I want to pray for a job, or I want to pray for health, or I want to pray for somebody's birthday, and then they will prescribe a particular yagya. It's like a scientific formula, like you apply this formula, and then if you do it properly, and the result will happen. So it's like going to a chemical lab. Yagyas are very much like going to a chemistry lab, and then you throw a certain formula together and certain reactions take place when you chant a certain mantra. With that, because mantras are like catalyst, the mantras are very charged, the vibrations of a mantra, they're very powerful. They are like a catalyst, they are like alchemy, they will trigger certain things to happen. So they're like energy formulas. Mantras are like energy formulas, and they will invoke certain things. Now, devatas, most people don't understand what Devi Devatas are. They are there are seven loks. There are seven dimensions above. I mean, in Vedic cosmology, there are several dimensions above the earth. So Bhu, Bhuvar, Swar, Maha, Jana, Tapa, and Satya. Okay, there's seven loks. You don't have to really know. I mean, you can look it up. But in one of the loks, so we are in the earth lok, then the one above it is the Bhuvar lok, and the one above that is the Swaha lok or the Dev lok. So in that dimension is where a lot of these Devi Devatas reside. So they are basically deities. A lot of times people say, oh, Hinduism has many gods. It's not that we have many gods, we have many deities, And it's not just that we have many deities, there are thousands of categories of beings. And the Purans, and even I think here they may be mentioned in the Gita, but not so much in detail. But there's so many beings, Devi Devatas are one, like rishis, there are siddhas, there are many other, many other categories of beings. I can't remember them all off my head, but as you go up higher in the dimensions, they become less and less and less. These beings become less and less and less. So these are enormous amount of descriptions, and all this stuff is there in the Purans. So these deities, they are responsible for certain area of creation. They are sort of the caretakers of certain aspects of creation. Like in Christianity, you have Angel Michael and Ariel and all of these things. But, like you have Lakshmi for certain things, but you also have Surya, who is responsible for, the fire aspect, which is connected to your eyesight and to your sense of sight, to your eyes. So like that, all aspects of creation in the microcosm, which is in your body, whether it's your senses, your intellect, your breath, all of these things, the sense of hearing, they're connected to a macrocosmic principle, like of fire, water, ether, all the five elements. And there's a presiding deity for that, a principle for that. Like, for example, today is Basant Panchami, which is Saraswati. So I mean, I know this is not part of the Gita, but I'll just tell you where here it's talking so much, the Karma Yoga, this entire third chapter is talking about all these sacrifices and yajnas and all this thing that we do. Um, so, for example, Saraswati is not a woman somewhere sitting in the sky. It's not like that. Saraswati, first of all, is a consort, or the divine partner of Brahmaji. Okay, so Braham means I am consciousness. He's the creator because the soul or the consciousness is the creator. Consciousness brings about creation. That is why he's the creator. Braham means I am consciousness. So in order to realize that you are consciousness, you need certain qualities. So consciousness is transcendental, okay? Consciousness. But what is it in creation that you need to realize that you are consciousness? So creation is the divine feminine aspect, and here usually a deity will be associated with certain qualities, certain functions, okay? So Saraswati is basically not a woman. These are qualities. So the qualities here is that you need to have knowledge of yourself. And unless you have knowledge of yourself, you cannot know that you are consciousness. The second quality is dhyan, that you need to meditate to experience that you are consciousness. Music and creativity come from that aspect of Saraswati, the consciousness. When it creates, right, that creativity, like refined arts, music, and she holds the veena, So these symbols that you see with Saraswati, these transcend language, because languages change over time, but symbols do not change. A river, tree, colors, these don't change. That's why these symbols were used in Hinduism, so that they would transcend languages, and they will stay on for a long time. Even if languages change over time, these symbols will not erode. They will still stay eternal. So that's why symbols were kept, so that it's not bound by language. So these symbols mean certain things. So, like for example, she wears white. Okay, white is because Saraswati symbolizes purity or sattva. So only when a person has attained a certain level of purity does that quality. Now these are all, like, think of Saraswati as a quality in you. Everybody has Saraswati in them. Okay, so like in a person, when purity rises, when Saraswati, the qualities of Saraswati rises, that is when that person starts investigating, who am I, and how do I experience myself. That purity, when it rises, then the urge to meditate, to know the self rises. That person gets interested in refined, arts or creativity. Creativity blossoms, and refined arts, he becomes or he or she becomes interested in music or whatever, painting and so forth. So when you see these qualities in a person, these are qualities that arise as the purity in the person increases. So Saraswati is a symbol for purity. That is why she wears white. And all these qualities I described of Gyan, Dhyan, and Gan, which actually Shri Ravi Shankar tweeted today. And when you see the purity rise, these qualities of this person are seen as such. She sits on a rock because knowledge is solid as a rock. It's rock solid. It'll stay with you for a long time. See, versus Lakshmi, she stands on a flower, and a flower, that lotus that she stands on, is very fickle. It's very unstable, because outer wealth is very unstable. Whereas Saraswati is sitting on a rock. Okay, which means knowledge is solid. It's not fickle, it's not unstable. She holds a veena because the vibrations of a veena are very pure, very high vibrations. So if you hear the veena, the resonance of those vibrations are very high, are very pure. So that is why she's playing the veena, because the vibrations are so pure. So everything that you look at, in terms of what these symbols mean, you'll realize that, she's not a woman. So you can feel the Saraswati in you. And so when you have a yajna, when you have a homa, when you have a puja for Saraswati, so whether it's your child who's, going to learn music, from a guru or something, usually you'll start with a puja for Saraswati, or during Navratri you might have some puja for Saraswati. These mantras that you recite, they invoke these things in nature. They sort of become a catalyst for these things to sprout. And so these yajnas are done for these qualities to awaken in you, and also for the Saraswati principle to get ignited, So all of these pujas and homas are for some material benefit. So that is what this chapter is going into. That Krishnji is saying that, you in the Vedic yajnas, you were praying to all these devatas to get material prosperity. So I'm sorry I went off track, but I wanted to cover that. So that's what he covers here. And all these other things you can read on your own. I think I've gone into so much of what he's already talked about, where, you act from a level of detachment, and I've gone to it in great detail. But this is basically what he talks about throughout the chapter, is that you act from a level of detachment. So it's a fairly easy chapter. I think I've covered the gist of it. And you can read it on your own if you like. So, but if you have any questions, we can spend a few minutes here. If you have questions, any questions you guys came with?
Chapter 3, Karma Yoga, the verse 35.
Okay, one sec. Let me go there. Verse 35. Okay.
Why is this referenced here? I couldn't relate with that. That you do your own. If you do somebody else dharma, paradharma,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's worse than it's a worse or something like that. And I didn't.
Correct. Yes. I know this is again, like, this is very very famous, and it's been discussed a lot. So I'll just read the verse first for the others, and then we can talk about it. So he says, better one's own duty through devout, though if it's devoid of merit, then the duty of another well done. Even if you do your duty and you're not 100% or perfect in it, it's better than doing somebody else's duty and you don't do it, and you do it very well. I think you get what I mean. Better is death in one's own duty than the duty of another another is fraught with fear, is productive or positive danger. So basically what he's saying here is that, see, supposing your son wants to become something creative, he wants to get into music, okay? And he's being told, no, become an engineer, okay? So his nature, his nature is to be creative. Let me give you another example. I'll tell you why I'm giving you this example. There are four main personality types. I don't know if you've taken personality tests. They're very popular in corporates here. If you take a personality type, they'll tell you, you're this, whatever. In the Gita or in the Vedas, there are four personality types: scholar, leader, trader, and worker. Okay, we know that as caste system. It's really, we'll get into that later. But supposing somebody is of the type who is say, a scholar. Okay, his personality type is a type of scholar. Now he comes from a business family and is saying, no, 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 do business, do business, do business. But his nature is that of being a scholar. So what he's talking about here is alluding to that. Okay. Now when he says do your duty to Arjun, Arjun is a Kshatriya. Okay, he's a leader. He's at the leader category. In those days, it's not like, if you are a scholar type and you're born into a Kshatriya family, you have to be a Kshatriya. No, you can become a sage. A lot of these rishis were actually Kshatriyas, but you pursue what is your nature. Okay, so Arjun was a Kshatriya. His nature was of a Kshatriya, of a leader, of a administrator, of a fighter, of whatever. So the thing is, even if you fail in that, when you pursue your own purpose, life purpose, your own innate nature, even if you're not 100% in it, or if you're a failure in it, even if you die in pursuing that, it is better than forcing yourself in leading a life which is against your nature, because that is not dharma. Dharma is your innate nature. Like sun will shine. If you tell the sun, no, 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 be like water, a sun cannot be water. Its nature is to burn, not to put out fire. So follow your innate nature. Follow your duty. It's your duty to follow your innate nature. That's really the deeper meaning of this verse. Do you get it?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Now I got it. Why it was mentioned here. I was taking it like a religion. That
No,
dharma
no, no,
meaning.
no. It's very
Yeah, you are
connected.
reading
This
about religion,
this
and I was getting confused.
Yeah, this verse is connected to
Yeah.
many other verses in the Gita. So, if once you kind of have an overview idea of the Gita, then you can put it in the right context. It's a good question, because at least now you got to know about it. Others got to know about it. Anything else?
Can we also get your commentary, like the one that was sent to us for chapter 2, the PDF, where you have written some commentary?
Oh, the PDF. I haven't written a commentary. My second book, it's online. I think I'd sent a link. My first book. My first book is based on the Gita, the same theme as the Gita. The chapter 2 link is what I sent, is because it's a summary, and it gives you a foundation, gives you a basis for the Gita. So that's online. You can read that. It's some chapters I've put online. So, like chapter 3 of my book is based on Karma Yoga, because I've summarized Karma Yoga in chapter 3 of my book. And I think Seema had sent that link, but it's simply, you just go to vinitapande.com without a Y, VINITAPANDE.com, and then you go to books, the tab for books, and there you will see my first few chapters are there of my first book, and you can
Okay.
read them.
I think she did send it, but I didn't understand.
Yeah. I hope that was beneficial. I hope you guys enjoyed the session.
It was awesome.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
the books that you refer to while you like the symbologies used and everything, where do you get that information from?
Oh, years of study.
Yeah, but which books do you study? I go to the library mostly over here in the library.
Oh, I don't read books. You'll be surprised. I actually do not read books. I'm a very audio-visual person. I read here and there. I like read a paragraph here, paragraph there. But don't worry, now you know. But it's if you have the urge, because I'm of the scholar category. So if you have the urge to learn, you will keep learning. You'll keep learning, keep learning.
Yeah, I highly recommend buying books that Vinita. She's authored 2 books, and both the books are very beautiful. I'd highly recommend buying those books from Amazon.
Yeah, on Amazon. Okay, I'll check out.
Thanks for marketing my books.
I actually tried the Vinita Pandey
Uh-huh.
and VINITAPANDEY.com.
No,
So
not no.
why?
There's no Y. Just PANDE.com. There is no Y in Pandey. And my first book's first 5 chapters, I believe, are I put them online. I didn't want to put the other chapters online because my publisher would be very upset with me. Plus, I do not want people to read those without proper, it's a sequence. You need to read them in sequence. So it's very deep, the other knowledge, the other chapters is very, very good. I actually like my first book because it's a very good summary. It's short, it's easy to understand. I don't know. Seema can talk. She's got it. So I don't know. I think it's helpful. Actually, I still read it sometimes just as a reference. So,
Yeah, I think it's just summarized in a very nice way, so you don't have to read so many chapters. It's just a very nice summary that
yeah.
you can keep on rereading.
I want to cover one chart, so I'll send this chart to Seema, and I want you guys to just look at this chart. It's actually a visualization of the Tattva Bodh, which is written by Adi Shankaracharya. It's like Hinduism 101. It's like a prereq for the knowledge. And actually, in Chinmaya Mission, you're supposed to learn that before you step into the Gita. And I kind of did it for you where I talked about the levels of existence and I did all that, but I'll send you the chart. It's very helpful.
Vinita, Iti has a question, and maybe we can respond to this later since we are 10 minutes above 8 o'clock. She writes, can we have some metaphysical meaning to all the symbolism referred?
Which one?
Hi Vinita, I think you did mention quite a lot of it. Thank you, Seema, first of all, for referring to the question. You were telling the fire and the meaning of it.
Uh-huh.
Similarly, like when we are reading Gita, a lot of it, or any other, I mean, I've not read much of it, but whatever gist of Upanishads and Ved I have got, there's a lot of deeper meaning to it.
Correct.
And so many a times I feel that that is kind of missed. So I was wondering if there is any book, or because verse by verse will not be possible.
No. So read Swami Chinmaya's commentary, because the job of a guru is not to give you the literal meaning, is to give you the implied meaning. So for the implied meaning, I really like Swami Chinmaya because he goes by because I've read many of them, like some gurus will go into too much esoteric stuff, but he sticks to the traditional way, and he'll stick to Adi Shankaracharya's commentary, and which aligns very well with the Vedas. So you can have a person like Yogananda or somebody else who are Kriya Yoga gurus. They will take a very different angle to the implied meaning. The implied meaning that you're referring to, I like the Chinmaya approach. I mean, I've got so many commentaries, so many things, but if you want the proper understanding, use Swami Chinmaya's. One other thing, I'll send remind me, Seema, I want to send these 2 things. One is the chart I want to send you guys. The second thing is on YouTube. You will find a whole series of these episodes called Upanishad Ganga. There's a series of that came on Doordarshan. It was made by Chinmaya Mission for TV, and there are different topics on it. Like Karma Yoga, they'll be there, on Brahma, on various different topics. It's really good, amazing stuff. So you can watch that also. It's very nice.
Thank you. I think it will be pretty helpful. I mean, it's a screen knowledge that I can just directly go and tap onto. Thank you so much for it.
Sure. It's endless. This thing is endless,
I agree. But a nice way to make a start.
Yes.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. And feel free to contact me one-on-one. I mean, if you want to talk or have questions or anything, okay? All right. It's great having you guys. So you can, if you like, you can read just the verses of chapter 4, or you can go back and, but I really want you guys to live the Gita, you know. So during the week, go back and just be more attentive to what we have spoken today. And every time you get off your center, become aware of it. Oh, I got angry. Oh, I reacted. Just observe it, okay? Because that's sthita pragya we talked about, right? Steady in wisdom. So just do not do it with guilt. Do not blame yourself. Don't get into this guilt trip, but just observe yourself throughout the week. As whenever you get off center, just observe it as third person, okay?
Quick question. The book that you were referring to about the commentary, what is it called? The Holy Gita or?
Yeah, the Holy Gita.
The Holy Gita. Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks for staying on longer. It's past. It's almost 8:15.
Thanks, everybody. Good night. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.